Charter Trustees, ladies and gentlemen, would you kindly be up standing for Her Worshipful the Mayor of Bournemouth, Councillor Jackie Edwards.
I'd like to welcome Charter Trustees, I'll say the press and members of the public, I can't see any, to this meeting of the Bournemouth Charter Trustees. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow these ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand physically to indicate, and when called to speak, turn your microphone on. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there's any dissension. When a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. Charter Trustees are advised that this meeting is being live streamed and will be available for live and in-demand viewing via the Council's YouTube page. Before we start the business on the agenda, as you know, the Charter Trustees is a non-political body with the primary objective being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Bournemouth. I'm keen that we all work together to maintain this objective. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Please could you confirm any apologies for absence received from trustees?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've received apologies from Councillors Sharon Carr-Brown, John Challoner, Dwayne Farr, John Beasley, Jamie Martin, Karen Rampton, Richard Burton and Eleanor Connolly.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I just...
Yeah, are there any other apologies?
Indeed.
No? Richard?
Madam Mayor, through you. So, members, we are technically in quorum. We require a third of members to be present for the meeting to proceed, which is a total number of 14, and we haven't got that number in front of us. So, in accordance with the standing orders, the meeting would ordinarily be abandoned or adjourned, with remaining business being referred to the next ordinary meeting of the Charter Trustees. However, this is the last meeting of Bournemouth Charter Trustees. The items of business on the agenda are not decision-making. So you're unable, as you're in quorum, you're unable to make any formal decisions. But I wonder, Madam Mayor, whether it would be worth just receiving the reports for information for the benefit of those present in the room and for those watching online for transparency. And then the officers can perhaps give an update in terms of any what will happen with any recommendations that are in the reports that you have before them.
Yes, I think that's the best thing we can do in the circumstances. Thank you, Richard. Agenda item 2, any declarations of interest? Honorary Clerk, can you please report on any declarations of interest received?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No declarations have been received.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. We'll now take item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 23rd of October 2025. Are those agreed as a true record?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the Mayor's communication. Sadly, this is the last meeting of the Charter Trustees, as the new Town Council will be taking over in May. In future, the new Mayor will be elected from members of the Town Council. Despite undergoing 2 lots of chemo treatment in my term, I have managed to get to do quite a few mayoral events. The Iraq tasting was very welcome, although I couldn't feel my legs for quite a while afterwards, but I'm blaming that on the chemo. It was a poignant visit to the closing of the synagogue in Bournemouth town centre, so it could be relocated. Although not understanding many of the songs, it was an uplifting event. Thanks go to Michael Filer for looking after me and explaining much of what was happening. I'd also like to thank all those people who have welcomed me to all the events I've attended. So here are a few of them that I was privileged to be invited to and take part in since the last Charter Trustees meeting. I attended 3 of the Bournemouth University graduation ceremonies and the graduation ceremony for the Health Sciences University at Parkwood Road. Remembrance Sunday on the 9th of November was attended by over 1,000 of our scouts, guides from the youngest to the older ones, Sea Scouts and all the various cadets. It's also very moving to see how many locals attend this service. I was happy to be able to say a few words at the Phoebe Memorial, which is next to the perhaps behind the main cenotaph. The Salvation Army Remembrance Service later on that Sunday was entertaining yet moving, lots of different music and little skits performed. They have an amazing different group of musicians. I also attended the Kinston Remembrance Day service on the 11th of November. I visited a few care homes for either special birthdays or Christmas events. Lovely seeing people dancing to live music, including one lady who was 100 years old. I also had the honour of going to the Guildhall in London for the Rifles biannual gathering and dinner. A tiring day, but a wonderful event in such a beautiful building. Queen Camilla, Sophie Duchess of Edinburgh and the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester all in attendance. I had chosen wisely in an evening dress in the Rifles Regiment, the right shade of green. I was also asked if I was the Lady Mayor of London, which I think was due to the Bournemouth mayoral chains that I was wearing. Late November and December brought quite a few carol services, including a wonderful one at the Pavilion put on by local schools. The service at St Andrews with the Freemasons had a beautiful choir, with my new favourite carol being Carol of the Bells. We had young carers in to decorate the Christmas tree in the Mayor's parlour. I'm sure you either saw the tree or the photos. Not an inch of that tree wasn't covered in tinsel. The children loved it, and I hope it remains an annual event. A few regalia talks were held, some being better attended than others, but all said how much they enjoyed learning about the Civic Centre's history and about the interesting items in the parlour. I'm looking forward to meeting the various groups in the last of the regalia talks during my term. The Pathfinders group being one of the last who will visit the Mayor's parlour. I do hope the girl who painted a portrait of me will be able to visit. It's not as big as George's portrait though. Luckily, events were quiet for January as I restarted chemo. I attended 2 Chinese New Year celebrations on the 16th and 21st of February, which were a great deal of fun. So thanks to the wonderful kitchen in Charminster and the Sovereign Centre in Boscombe. There was a dragon dance, which I had a job keeping up with. I mean, who knew dragons move so fast? There was in addition the lion dance from the Southampton Chinese Association and some aerial dancing for the Bournemouth Chinese School, which is open to all. I visited Dingley's Promise in Kinston yesterday, where specialist support is given to children aged 0 to 5 with SEND. This morning I was at the new Lewis Manning shop in Boscombe. In keeping with tradition, there will be a civic service on the 21st of March at St Peter's Church from 2 p.m. I do hope you can come along, where you will have the chance to wear your robes for the last time. Light refreshments will be served after the service. I would like to take the opportunity to say how honoured I've been to be Mayor of Bournemouth, and thanks to George for stepping in when the events clashed or I wasn't well. We move on to agenda item 5, which is the report of the Bournemouth Civic Working Group. Councillor Lawrence Williams, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the previous Charter Trustee meeting held on the 23rd of October last year, it was resolved that the Charter Trustees accept the gifting of the mayoral portrait from Councillor Farquhar and overturn the 2022 decision that no additional portraits are being hung in the Mayor's parlour, so that Councillor Farquhar's portrait may potentially be hung in the parlour. Subject to cost and subject to the Civic Working Group determining appropriate locations for it and for other portraits to ensure their visibility by the public. However, the given requirement to prioritise staff resources towards the dissolution of the Charter Trustees on the 31st of March this year and the creation of the Bournemouth Town Council on the 1st of April, it has not been possible to progress this. The Civic Working Group considered this matter and deemed it appropriate to defer this to the Town Council's new clerk to progress once they're in post. The Working Group has requested that the Civic team ensures that Charter Trustee mayoral photographs are mounted in a frame for handover to the new Town Council. Mayoral robes. In order to transfer regalia to the new Town Council in good condition, the Civic Working Group has authorised the Civic team to procure new robes for the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to replace the historic robes that are in a state of disrepair. Quotes have been received and the final design and preferred supplier have been selected. However, given that the expected delivery date and subsequent invoicing will be after the Charter Trustees have been dissolved, advice received from the responsible financial officer is that expenditure should be approved by the shadow Bournemouth Town Council. The total expenditure to be requested is £7,275. Should the Charter Trustees support this, the request for approval will be put to the Shadow Town Council at a future meeting in March 2026, date to be announced. It's recommended that the Charter Trustees support the proposed expenditure to procure new mayoral robes for consideration by the Shadow Bournemouth Town Council. Assets. Following a recent revaluation of all assets owned by the Bournemouth Charter Trustees, which will be transferred to Bournemouth Town Council as of midnight on the 31st of March 2026. The asset register has been updated with current valuations reflecting a significant increase in value, largely due to the rising price of metals. The register now includes clear locations for each asset and an improved storage with label boxes and laminated inventory sheets. No items are missing, though there are damage to a trophy which will be reported as part of the transfer. A supplementary order will be completed by the end of March, listing all assets without photos or valuations for the public record. A version of the asset log including reference numbers, photos and storage locations will be provided to the new Town Council for cross-referencing. Insurance for the assets will be in place from the 1st of April 2026, the first year budget including a 30% contingency to account for the increased valuations, and the insurance company is being reviewed to ensure adequate coverage. Regarding the transfer of mayoral vehicles and number plates, the working group was reminded that the current vehicle and plate were transferred to BCP Council in 2019. A report on the potential transfer of the Poole Civic number plate is being prepared in response to a motion on this subject, which is to be determined at a future meeting of BCP Council. Trustees' attendance at meetings. Trustees have resolved that attendance at meetings is to be reviewed. No comment. At each subsequent meeting by way of standing item. This is set out in the agenda item 719. Given that the Charter Trustees are to be dissolved on the end of March, this attendance report is provided for information only, as there is no recommendation for further action. Finally, it is recommended that the Charter Trustees note the contents of this report, and the Charter Trustees support the proposed expenditure to procure a new mayoral rolls for consideration by the Shadow Town Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. As we can't take any recommendations and vote on them tonight, just please take note that that's just a report there. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I can, just through you, for those present, we have now, subsequent to the publishing of the report, we have today actually scheduled a meeting of the Bournemouth Shadow Town Council for the 26th of March. Excuse me. Excuse me. We will still take the request for expenditure to that meeting. Clearly, anyone present who also wants to attend that meeting can have their say on that subject at that meeting.
If I may, with your indulgence, Madam Mayor, I know that we can't do anything more than note this particular report because we're in quorum. But I would like to speak a little to the report and offer up, for purposes of the minutes, our thanks to the members of the civic working group, and also our thanks to the officers and civic team that have worked so hard to ensure that we're handing over the stewardship of the assets and the trust, literally, of maintaining the mayoralty for Bournemouth. So I would seek a seconder from yourself, Madam Mayor, for that vote of thanks to be noted in the minutes.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you. Councillor Hannah, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. First of all, I fully endorse Councillor Farquhar's comments. But with regard to the proposal that we put to the Shadow Council, a suggestion for expenditure, I wonder if Mr. Jones could advise whether the delegated authority that was given by BCP Council to the Shadow Council does in fact include expenditure of whatever kind. I thought it was rather limited to the appointment of clerks. And as a point of principle, I would also suggest that it might perhaps be appropriate for the elected town councillors of Bournemouth to make a decision on the matter. Thank you.
Has anybody got a question while Richard looks up the answer to that? Thank you.
Yeah, just ask one question. It might be a bit silly, but if we're going to have a mayoralty, if the new town council will have a mayoralty, will the Charter Trustees, you know, it'll be new people and new councillors, will they take part in events like the Remembrance Service, you know, and will we pass the Charter Trustee robes on to the new Bournemouth Town councillors? Just a question to just wonder what was going to happen, because I think in particular a lot of these events are well attended by the public and it would be nice to keep them going, you know, particularly like the Remembrance Service.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I believe so, but I think Neil's going to answer you.
Yeah, so if I heard you correctly, so robes and all other civic assets will be transferred to the new to the new town council as of 1st of April. In fact, midnight on 31st of March. In fact, in terms of events such as Remembrance, it will be under the it's for the town council, so where they wish to do those events. But if they do so, it will be their responsibility rather than BCP Council to run those events.
Could you just clarify, so it will be the choice of the town council if they want to take part in the ceremony as the Charter Trustees used to? That will be down to the town council as to whether they're going to wear the robes and carry out services and as they did before, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So the first year's budget makes provision for essential things, but there is an amount of reserves that will also be transferred across, which they can use as they see fit when they begin to meet with their newly elected councillors.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. That's clarifying.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've looked up the resolution that we had, so it did include the recruitment part, but it also included, so it was for a shadow council be established for the new council for the purpose of recruiting and recruiting respective clerks and to deal with any other matters requiring a resolution prior to implementation. So it was quite broad in that remit in that regard. So I'm satisfied that that resolution covers the issue around robes.
I'm grateful to Mr. Jones. I heard the word requires.
Through you, Madam Mayor, one of your requirements as Charter Trustees and as Shadow Councillors is to transfer over the assets. You are responsible as Charter Trustees to maintain and as custodians of the historic assets and the assets that we have. And the robes are considered part of those regalia assets. And therefore, I think it is appropriate for the Shadow Authority to have a conversation and a debate and determine whether it wishes to fund those and place orders for those robes. I think that's within that reasonable element in terms of transferring over the assets that you've got.
Councillor Hannah, did you want to add anything to that? Councillor Hannah, did you want to add anything? Or are you okay with the answer there?
Neither, thank you.
Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to Mr. Jones for that point of clarification. But I did want to support Councillor Hannah's point about this is a point of principle. I do not believe this is a decision either for this body or indeed for the Shadow Council to take. The appointment of a mayor of Bournemouth Town Council has yet to be taken. It is not automatic. It is a decision that the Bournemouth Town Council will need to make. So we are presuming that they will take that decision. I understand it's a matter of protocol. Understand that there is precedent to do this, but it is not automatic, Madam Mayor. So my point is, I believe that this is not a decision that we should ask, or we should be asking Shadow Council to take. I believe it is a decision for the new Town Council, once it's in place, once people are elected to it, to take. I do not believe we should be considering it at this point in time. Thank you.
Richard, did you want to come in here?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. So again, if I can just highlight, this is a report from the Civic Working Group. The Civic Working Group have identified there is a need for replacement robes. If we were continuing as a body for Charter Trustees, that there is a requirement to replace those robes and or repair them. Clearly, you can't make a decision tonight because you're in quorum whether or not to do that. And I'm not suggesting that the Shadow Council need to affirm that. So I don't think it's a given. I think those are the words that were used. It is for the Shadow Council to determine whether it wishes to approve that expenditure or not. I do take the point. The Shadow Council may resolve not to make a decision and leave that for the Town Council. But that will be an item for discussion by the Shadow Council.
Councillor Farquhar.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Having became a Charter Trustee in 2019 when first elected, sorry, is it a discussion that we need to be aware of as trustees? So, having become a Charter Trustee in 2019 and subsequently served as the Mayor last year, the Charter in itself is something which is handed down from Queen Victoria in 1890. The Charter Trustee as a legal instrument, as a body, is there for the stewardship in abeyance and awaiting the creation of a Town Council. The Town Council does have a responsibility to continue the mayoralty of Bournemouth that has been in existence for 136 years now. And it's a case of that stewardship and that trust that's put in us is very well laid out in both the standing orders and the Charter itself for the trustees in law. One of the things which he says, Mr. Jones has pointed out, is the maintenance of the regalia and the maintenance of the historic artefacts that we hold in trust for the future Town Council. We have discussed budget at many of these meetings, and we have a budget in hand, which it is the responsibility of the Civic Working Group to report on our equipment, our resources and our assets. The Civic Working Group have done their job well. We're not in a position here where we could decide or gainsay what the town council may wish to do for those assets, but as trustees, we are obliged, and it's our moral obligation, to ensure that we hand over what was entrusted to us in good order. During the course of those 7 years since it came into being, some of those items have fallen by the wayside. They've been repaired, ongoing, and replaced. The fact that we are going into this situation whereby town council is coming in very short order, it's beholden upon us to listen to the Civic Working Group and the recommendations that they have, and not to gainsay the duties and obligations that the Civic Working Group and all of us as trustees are actually entrusted to do. So that's my observation on it, and I will bring it, if necessary, to the Shadow Council, but it's one of the duties and responsibilities of trustees. So, Trustee Hannah, I appreciate you shaking your head, but if we want to argue semantics about it, it needs to be in a different place. Thank you.
Councillor
Madam
Williams.
Mayor, on a point of personal
Excuse me, I
explanation,
think I was next. I had my hand up.
on a point of personal explanation, having been named, I do understand the history and historic value involved. In this particular case, we're not simply talking about the maintenance of the assets, we're talking about new purchases. And that is where I beg to differ with Councillor Farquhar. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I think it's not beneficial to have a back and forth, but I would recommend that the Trustee Hannah actually reads the standing orders and the charter itself, whereas that outlines our responsibilities for the maintenance and the acquisition of historic artefacts and things. So, as I say, Madam Mayor, this is not the place for back and forth. There's a disagreement here on how it should be conducted. We're not quorate, can't make a decision, but I'm quite sound in my understanding, being a Charter Trustee since 2019, as regards what our responsibilities and duties are. And I'll give way to the Chair of the Civic Working Group.
Thank you. All I wanted to say, Madam Mayor, was that when I was Mayor in 2017, the roads were in a shocking state. They've been repaired a number of times since then, but a shocking state, and they're disgusting, aren't they? I wouldn't be proud to wear them today, and I feel that we should be passing something that is acceptable in today's world to the new Mayor of Bournemouth, whoever that might be, and the new Deputy Mayor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, moving on then. We'll take item 6 on the agenda, the finance update, February 2026. Mr. Filmer, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to emphasise, this is just to note this report in terms of finance update, which is as at the end of February 2026. We are forecasting an underspend for the year of £6,373, and that's the detail of that's broken down on Appendix A to this report. At the bottom of that Appendix A, you'll see where we started in terms of the reserves for the year, and that with that underspend, we're forecasting a closing reserve position of just shy of £105,000, which will transfer over to the Bournemouth Town Council. The report also just covers the annual governance and accountability return, which will be the sort of wrap-up of the 25-26 accounts. Appendix B, in anticipation of that, is the internal audit report that we have to complete. And then once, obviously, we've finished 31st of March, the accounts will be completed. They'll be externally audited, and it will be for the Town Council to receive those that AGAR return once they're complete. So I'll stop there, Madam Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody got any questions on this report? No? Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7. We'll now, agenda item 8. We'll take the trustee attendance at meetings. Mr. Fraser, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's a bit of a moot point because we are in quorate, but even if we were quorate, the report is simply presented for noting only, given that the Charter Trustees will be dissolved in a matter of weeks. It wouldn't be appropriate to suggest any further recommendations in relation to Charter Trustee attendance. But happy to take any questions if there are any.
I can't see any hands. So Charter Trustees, that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much for those that attended.
Charter Trustees, ladies and gentlemen, would you kindly be upstanding while the civic members exit the chamber? Thank you very much.